Have you ever wondered why personal transformations often make others uncomfortable? It's rarely spoken about openly. Instead, true feelings are masked by jokes, feigned concern, or heavy silence when a deeper topic arises. Deep down, a simple truth lies hidden. Your spiritual growth becomes a threat to their accustomed world, and who truly wants to confront their own inertia? Perhaps this process is happening to you right now. Your way of thinking has changed, your actions are different, and things once considered unshakable are now questioned. And then, a feeling of loneliness, misunderstanding, and judgment emerges. No one warns you, but Friedrich Nietzsche fully grasped it. This is the price for forging a strong spirit. Not just strength as such, but a power so potent and palpable that it elicits aversion. It frightens and silently exposes the weakness of those who continue to live by inertia. But why does this happen? The answer lies in the fact that a truly exceptional intellect poses a serious threat to the collective standard of mediocrity. Friedrich Nietzsche, the great philosopher, repeatedly emphasized this pattern. When an individual dares to think independently, form their own moral principles, and reject the comforting illusion of ready-made truths, they inevitably become a figure of apprehension. They represent a threat to the existing order, to those who prefer to go with the flow, and, most importantly, to their former, more conformist self. This is not merely an invitation. It is a challenge issued to those who strive for profound change. It is not for those seeking comfort or simple solutions. It is addressed to those tired of being prisoners of their own insecurity, who feel an internal conflict and are ready to create something unbreakable. It speaks of a mind immune to manipulation, a mind that inspires awe with its resilience. So, if you feel ready to embark on this path, a lonely one, full of difficulties, yet promising complete transformation, stay. Nietzsche's teaching may confront you with yourself, but it can also grant you freedom. After this experience, your thinking will never be the same. Friedrich Nietzsche appears before us not merely as a philosopher, but as a skilled surgeon performing complex operations on the human soul. With unyielding courage, he gazed into the gaping abyss of human existence, not just observing it, but delving into its deepest reaches. And it was there, in that terrifying internal chaos that most people try to turn away from, that he discovered an inexhaustible source of genuine strength. According to Nietzsche's philosophical views, personal transformation does not occur in conditions of peace and stability, but in the crucible of pain and suffering. One transforms by falling and navigating through chaos. His famous saying, "One must have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star," is not just a beautiful metaphor, but a profound psychological analysis. It means that to form an unshakable mind, one must abandon the naive notion that this will happen through comfort and superficial motivation. True strength is born when one bravely confronts suffering, without trying to escape it. When one stops praying for life to become easier and begins striving to become stronger. It is worth recalling moments of significant personal growth. Was it when everything was going perfectly? Or perhaps it was during periods when one was shattered, lost, and disoriented, forced to rebuild oneself from ruins, relying solely on one's own strength? Friedrich Nietzsche, the provocative thinker, saw suffering not as an annoying hindrance on life's path, but as a fundamental driver of human existence. He did not glorify pain as something beautiful, but rather perceived it as a valuable tool for achieving greatness. One who can reframe their relationship with pain, failures, and loneliness will begin to forge something truly unique within themselves, an indomitable spirit. It is then that the world will cast a worried gaze upon them. While most people seek to escape chaos and uncertainty, such an individual will learn to move confidently within its epicenter. While others crave tranquility and predictability, they will create something outstanding. However, such a transformation demands a painful rupture with conventional notions of strength. To be strong, according to Nietzsche, does not mean constantly smiling and hiding true emotions behind a mask of false composure. True strength lies in the ability to endure unbearable trials and emerge from them even more hardened and formidable. Yet, the philosopher understood that chaos alone is insufficient. Without an inner core, a reliable anchor, it can destroy an individual. This is why Nietzsche moves to the most crucial point of his philosophy, the death of God, and the placing of the full weight of existential responsibility squarely on humanity itself. When there is nothing left to hope for and no one to call upon, an entire universe must be born within the individual. When Friedrich Nietzsche proclaimed the famous phrase, "God is dead," he was not exulting, but warning. His words were filled with profound meaning that, unfortunately, many still do not grasp. The philosopher destroyed not the idea of the divine itself, but dispelled the illusion of an omnipotent higher power that supposedly cares for all existence. He shattered the belief in a predetermined plan, a preordained meaning and purpose bestowed by someone external. The death of God, according to Nietzsche, meant the end of all excuses and the shifting of responsibility. This realization instills terror, for it was once so convenient to place the burden of one's life on some higher power. It was comforting to believe that everything happened for a reason, that suffering was part of a divine plan, and that ultimately, a higher good would justify everything. However, Nietzsche mercilessly tears away this mask, forcing humanity to face reality and realize they are alone. There is no ready-made meaning, no predestination. One becomes the creator of one's own destiny. It is here that the process of forming a strong and independent mind begins. Most people, confronted with the realization of their solitude in the face of chaos, the absence of guidance, guarantees, and culprits, collapse. But those who find the courage to withstand this blow and not break will begin to forge an unshakable consciousness, capable of independently determining their path in life. After Nietzsche's proclamation of the death of God, humanity finds itself facing boundless and radical freedom, where former guideposts and prescriptions lose their power. There is no longer a need to blindly follow commandments. Now, the task of each individual is to forge their own values and meanings. The rejection of submission and the striving for constant self-overcoming become key imperatives. In this act of fierce autonomy's birth also lies the burden of responsibility, for now each person determines their own fate. The absence of universal forgiveness and predetermined salvation presents a choice: either actively build oneself or be doomed to perish. However, it is precisely this frightening freedom that is an inexhaustible source of inner strength. The realization that salvation will not come from outside awakens dormant reserves. A fire ignites within, compelling one to rise even in moments of weakness and despair. This fire prompts independent thought and feeling, to act not on command, but on one's own conviction. The break from existential crutches, proposed by Nietzsche, prepares the ground for the emergence of a fundamentally new way of being, an individual who does not live by the laws of the herd, who needs no approval or permission. This is a being who independently creates their own morality, transcends their own limitations, and lives as a creator. Their existence frightens the weak, forcing them to see their own inadequacy. This being is called the Übermensch, Overman, and it is this phenomenon that will be the subject of further consideration. For to build a mind immune to external influence, one must understand how to become one who stands above conventions, guided only by their own will to power. Friedrich Nietzsche rejected the concept of gradual and smooth human development, advocating instead for the idea of sudden and radical transformation, of the creative destruction of the old for the sake of creating the new. This very message lies at the heart of his famous concept of the Übermensch. It is important to emphasize that this is by no means a comic book character endowed with supernatural abilities. The Übermensch, according to Nietzsche, is an individual who has overcome the chains that bind the ordinary person: guilt, blind obedience, conformist morality, and the need for external approval. The Übermensch does not seek universal recognition and needs no permission to exist. They create their own moral principles and follow them, even if it goes against accepted norms. It is this independence that makes their mind unshakable, for it does not depend on others' expectations. They do not need external validation to confirm their own significance. They are self-sufficient and draw strength from their will to power, a deep-seated drive to transform reality in accordance with their own vision. This is the essence of the concept. The Übermensch does not adapt to the world but imbues it with meaning. They do not seek comfort and ease. Their goal is greatness. They do not ask, "Is it permitted?" but rather, "Is it worthy of me?" Such a shift in priorities changes everything. When one begins to perceive oneself as a creator, not a servant, their thoughts, actions, and feelings undergo a complete transformation. However, to become such a being, a sacrifice is necessary. One must destroy within themselves those parts that still crave recognition. They will have to face the pain of alienation. They will have to bear the heavy burden of creating their identity from scratch, without any guarantees, encouragement, or cheers of approval. And most people prove unable to cope with this. They retreat before they even begin. They flee back to the safe haven of ready-made beliefs, dogmas, and rules that were established for them by others. The path to the Übermensch is a lonely one, and Friedrich Nietzsche understood this perfectly. He himself lived on the fringes of life, misunderstood, labeled a madman, detached from the world he sought to liberate. But it was in this isolation that he found his freedom. And this is what must be understood. The stronger the mind becomes, the further one distances themselves from the crowd, the higher they ascend, the more discomfort they cause. The creation of the Übermensch is the most brutal and transformative process an individual can face, for it requires the destruction of everything that is not one's own. Everything that was imposed by a sick culture, a society that rewards obedience and punishes authenticity. And only after this destruction does creation begin. But this building does not happen in a crowd. It happens in silence, in solitude, in the profound loneliness that separates the strong from the weak. That is why the next part of this narrative will delve into the most neglected, yet most powerful, aspect of this path, the loneliness of the strong. For the truth is that to achieve unshakability, one must learn to walk alone. And only a few are ready for this. Are you, the reader, ready? On the path to achieving exceptional mental strength, there is an aspect often unspoken. As the spirit strengthens, the feeling of solitude may intensify. This is not a result of a conscious choice for isolation, but rather a reflection of the fact that the surrounding world loses its bearings in interacting with you. Friedrich Nietzsche insightfully pointed to this pattern: a free spirit, an individual who rejects commonly accepted moral norms, who resists the temptation of simplistic truths, and possesses independent thought, inevitably distances themselves from the collective consciousness. This alienation can cause emotional pain, yet this pain is a necessary component of the personal growth process, which requires space for self-realization. It is impossible to develop while remaining bound by the expectations of others. A significant portion of humanity exists within an invisible herd, where every thought is controlled and every action is judged by the reactions of others. People are accustomed to moving in groups, thinking uniformly, and feeling secure in the company of their peers. However, Nietzsche proposes a diametrically opposite path. He rips the individual from their comfort zone and casts them into the desert of self-discovery. In this desert, there is no room for applause, praise, or guidance. One is left alone with their doubts, traumas, fears, and the temptation to surrender. This is where the true test begins, defining the strength of spirit and the capacity for genuine growth. For what would be the natural impulse of most? They will quickly retreat, once again hiding behind familiar masks, feigning insensitivity, thoughtlessness, and blindness. However, if the striving for unshakability is sincere, one must stay and face the silence that reveals true essence. Friedrich Nietzsche once remarked that an individual must constantly resist dissolving into the faceless mass. This path is fraught with loneliness and fear, but self-possession is priceless. This is the essence, in acquiring the true self, a rare and most powerful achievement. When one truly possesses themselves, they become immune to external control. Their value is not defined by external validation, and no one can break them. But this possession comes at the cost of loneliness. Losses and misunderstandings are inevitable. Such an individual will be accused of arrogance, strangeness, and aloofness. Attempts will be made to pull them back into familiar confines, labeling them a madman, cold, and unemotional. But this is the price for freedom from domestication, for independence from applause, for refusing to be a mirror of others' needs. In reality, the essence of freedom lies in one's ability to bear solitude. One who is not ready for solitude is not ready for true freedom. Genuine independence is gained through rejection, a rejection of emotional dependency, self-deception, and self-serving friendships. This is why Friedrich Nietzsche saw loneliness not as a burden, but as an exceptional opportunity, an arena where the true self has a chance to manifest. However, this free mind, this elevated spirit, does not merely shun society. It gains the ability to see what is hidden from others. And here arises the second inevitability, a clash with the gray mass. As one becomes stronger, mediocrity senses it and resists. The world does not persecute those who are indistinguishable from others. It attacks those who dare to stand out. Nietzsche did not fear tyrants or overt oppressors. He feared the hidden force that erodes society from within, collective mediocrity. This invisible system keeps everyone at a low level, punishes non-standard thinking, and rewards obedience, masking cowardice as virtue. Friedrich Nietzsche asserted that true despotism does not originate from power structures, but from the depths of the human masses. It is the crowd, in his view, that seeks to keep the individual in a state of spiritual immaturity, so that it may avoid the necessity of development itself. This phenomenon is particularly evident when an individual begins to stand out from the general mass. When their intellect becomes sharper, their spirit stronger, and their presence more noticeable, they begin to cause discomfort in others. And it is not due to any reprehensible actions, but because they demonstrate something rare and unusual, breaking familiar patterns. Society as a whole does not tolerate those who dare to disrupt the established order. Collective mediocrity cannot bear individual brilliance, because this brilliance exposes the drabness of ordinary life in an unflattering light. Nietzsche called this phenomenon slave morality, a system of values created by those who, unable to achieve greatness, simply perverted the very concepts of value. They transformed strength into arrogance, ambition into selfishness, and independence into coldness. Thus, a moral system was created that supposedly protects the weak, but in reality condemns the strong. However, do not be deceived into believing that this is dictated by compassion. At the heart of this morality lies resentment, for the weak do not seek salvation. Their true desire is to destroy those who are stronger. This is why, when an individual begins to free themselves from the shackles of mediocrity, they face attacks. Sometimes these attacks are direct and open, but more often they are veiled, manifesting in glances, silence, or ironic remarks. However, the meaning is always the same: get back in line. Your existence makes us feel insignificant. And this happens not intentionally, but simply because one dares to be oneself. Friedrich Nietzsche deeply understood that the vast majority of people drag out their existence in the grip of suffocating conformity, their lives dictated by fear, guilt, and blind obedience. Any individual who dares to question this order of things is immediately perceived as a source of danger. However, let there be no illusions: mediocrity does not resort to brute force. Its weapons are numerical superiority, universal consensus, and monotonous repetition. It will tirelessly strive to plant a seed of doubt within you, to convince you of the error of your divergent worldview, of your inability to fit into accepted norms. In its arsenal is the full spectrum of social tools, from shame to total rejection, just to make you bow your head. It is at this critical moment that many capitulate, unable to bear the burden of being strange, difficult, or arrogant. But Nietzsche would have given you a different name: necessary. For while the world continues to revolve in the orbit of recycled ideas, artificial desires, and convenient truths, it is the strong individual who can introduce the much-needed discomfort from which something fundamentally new is born. Your uniqueness is a spark capable of igniting transformation, but it also becomes the object of fierce resistance. To be strong, to think freely, and to live autonomously is tantamount to a declaration of war against collective mediocrity. And, like any war, this path requires careful preparation. You will need weapons, but not physical ones, mental ones. This is what the concluding part of the narrative will address. The development of a mind capable of inspiring fear comes at no small price. But the reward it brings cannot be taken away by anyone. In the next chapter, the reader will be able to realize the price and feel the full power of an unshakable spirit. The fact that you continue reading already sets you apart from the crowd. Many, faced with a challenge, would prefer to stop. They would retreat at the first sensation of discomfort, turning off the video as soon as they realized it was not intended to flatter their ego, but was a genuine call to action. This appeal is to those ready to abandon convenient delusions and face the truth. For creating a mind whose power inspires awe is not a simple decision, it is true self-sacrifice. On this path, losses are inevitable. You will lose friendships based on frivolity, miss opportunities that demand subservience, and lose the ability to be content with little. But in return, you will gain something far more valuable: integrity, clarity of thought, and heightened awareness. You will begin to notice that most around you are in a state of semi-slumber, and your insight will make them uncomfortable. Your resolve will cause them insecurity, and your absence will be felt more acutely than the presence of many others. This strength does not come from outside. It is not taught in self-help books. It cannot be gained through memorized phrases or empty affirmations. It is formed deep within, in the silence of sleepless nights, in decisions that go unnoticed. It is the result of an unrelenting inner struggle between the former self and who you strive to become. And this war is not destined to end, for true strength lies not in victory, but in the relentless continuation of the fight, even when there is an opportunity to stop. Friedrich Nietzsche did not seek to create an army of admirers of his ideas. His goal was to provoke profound upheavals within the human soul, to instigate an internal revolution. He urged us to abandon the humiliating search for approval, to cease futile pleas for life's meaning, and to stop looking for ready answers in established systems, for true meaning, in his view, is born only in the crucible of personal experience, through sweat, blood, and profound self-knowledge. The philosopher wanted everyone to become dangerous, but not in the sense of physical aggression, rather, in that rare and valuable sense where one's very existence becomes a challenge to others, forcing them to look into the mirror of their own soul and confront what they carefully avoid. And now, you are invited to take a step that will strengthen this process of self-discovery and liberation. In the comments, you are invited to share a hidden truth you are tired of concealing, to express an opinion you are afraid to voice, to reveal a thought that makes you feel alone, but which, in essence, is a reflection of your true self. This is an important part of the path to yourself, to assert your voice, declare your presence in the world, and, most importantly, proclaim that you no longer intend to bend to others' standards. If this message resonated, if something within you awakened, do not stop halfway. Your presence here means that the transformation process has already begun. You must continue to move forward, for on this journey, you are not alone. You are simply ahead, and that, undoubtedly, is frightening, but at the same time, it grants incomparable